I asked her out 7 times over the course of 9 months, and every single time Victoria said no, with that same apologetic smile and gentle excuse that broke my heart a little more each time. But on the 8th time, standing in the rain outside her apartment building with my heart in my throat, I looked her in the eyes and said, "This is the last time I'm going to ask, and if you say no, I'll walk away and never bother you again." And I watched something in her completely shatter. She grabbed my face with both hands and kissed me like she'd been drowning and I was air, and between tears and rain and desperate touches, she whispered, "I'm so sorry. I've been terrified. Please don't walk away." And I realized that sometimes rejection isn't about not wanting something, it's about being too scared to let yourself have it. Before we continue, I'd love to know where you're watching from. Drop your city in the comments below. And if you're enjoying this story, please hit that subscribe button. It truly helps the channel grow, and I appreciate every single one of you. Now let's get back to the story. I met Victoria on a Tuesday afternoon in March at a bookstore in Greenwich Village. I was browsing the poetry section, and she was standing 3 feet away doing the same thing, her long fingers trailing along the spines of books with a kind of reverence that immediately caught my attention. She had honey blonde hair that fell in waves past her shoulders, delicate features that looked like they belonged in a painting, and the saddest eyes I'd ever seen. Even before we spoke, I noticed the sadness, this deep melancholy that seemed to live in her gaze even when she smiled. We both reached for the same book at the same time, a collection by Mary Oliver, and our hands touched. She pulled back immediately, apologizing, but I just laughed and said we clearly had good taste. She smiled, really smiled, and for just a moment the sadness lifted, and I saw something bright and beautiful underneath. We started talking about poetry, about books, about why we both ended up in that particular bookstore on that particular Tuesday. Her voice was soft, almost musical, and she had this way of listening that made you feel like every word you said mattered. I learned she was 29, a year younger than me, and worked as a children's librarian at the public library in Brooklyn. She spoke about books the way other people spoke about lovers, with passion and tenderness and complete devotion. We talked for an hour, maybe more, standing in that poetry section until a bookstore employee politely suggested we might be more comfortable in the cafe. We moved there, ordered coffee, and kept talking. She told me about growing up in a small town in Pennsylvania, about always feeling different, about finding herself in books when she couldn't find herself anywhere else. I told her about my work as a graphic novelist, about the stories I was trying to tell, about my own journey of self-discovery. I knew I was falling for her before that first conversation even ended. There was something about Victoria that felt like coming home, like finding a piece of myself I hadn't known was missing. And from the way she looked at me, the way she leaned in when I spoke, the way she laughed at my jokes, I thought maybe she felt it too. So when we finally left the bookstore 3 hours after we'd met, I asked her out. "Victoria, I know we just met, but I'd love to take you to dinner sometime, like an actual date." The change in her was instant. Her whole body tensed, the brightness in her eyes dimmed, and that sadness came rushing back like a wave. "Oh, I'm sorry, but I can't. I don't really date. But thank you. This was really lovely." She left before I could say anything else, and I stood there on the sidewalk wondering what had just happened, how we'd gone from 3 hours of perfect connection to her practically running away. But she'd given me her number earlier when we were talking about book recommendations, so 2 weeks later, I texted her asking if she'd like to meet up for coffee as friends. She said yes. We met at a different cafe, and it was like the bookstore all over again. Easy conversation, shared laughter, genuine connection. She relaxed around me when there was no pressure, no expectations of it being anything more than friendship. We started meeting regularly, coffee once a week, then twice a week. We texted daily, sharing book recommendations and random thoughts and pieces of our days. She told me about difficult patrons at the library and kids who discovered their favorite books. I showed her early sketches from my graphic novel in progress. We became friends, real friends, and I treasured that even as I wanted more. 3 months after we met, I asked her out again. We were walking through Prospect Park after getting ice cream, and the moment felt right. Perfect even. "Victoria, I know you said you don't date, but I have to ask again. Would you go out with me? Like a real date? Because I think you're incredible, and I'd really like to see if this could be something more." She stopped walking, and I saw panic flash across her face. I can't. I'm sorry. I really value our friendship, but I can't do more than that. Please don't ask me again. Okay, I said, my heart sinking. I'm sorry, I won't bring it up again. Except I did, because I'm stubborn and hopeful, and I could see the way she looked at me sometimes when she thought I wasn't paying attention. I could feel the electricity when our hands accidentally touched. I noticed how she found excuses to be close to me, how she texted me first thing in the morning and last thing at night, how she talked about me to her coworkers according to a mutual friend who worked at her library. Ask number 3 came 2 months later at an art gallery opening for a friend's show. Victoria had come as my +1, wearing a blue dress that made her look ethereal, and all night people assumed we were together. She didn't correct them. We drank wine and discussed the paintings, and at one point she held my hand while we looked at a particularly moving piece. When I walked her home that night, I asked again. Victoria, please, go on one date with me, just one. If you don't feel anything, I'll never ask again. No, she whispered, but there were tears in her eyes. I can't. Please stop asking. Ask number 4 happened after she called me crying at 2 in the morning because her grandmother had died. I went to her apartment immediately, held her while she sobbed, stayed with her for 3 days, helping with arrangements and phone calls and all the terrible logistics of death. I met her family at the funeral, and her mother pulled me aside to thank me for being such a good friend to her daughter. But there was a question in her eyes, like she was trying to figure out what exactly I was to Victoria. After the funeral, after everyone left, it was just the 2 of us in her apartment. She was exhausted, hollowed out by grief, and I was making her tea in her kitchen when she came up behind me and wrapped her arms around my waist, pressing her face against my back. Thank you for being here, she said. I don't know what I would do without you. I turned in her arms, and we were so close, and she was looking at me with something that looked like longing mixed with fear. Victoria, let me be here for you. Not just as a friend. Let me be yours. She pulled away like I'd burned her. No. God, why do you keep asking? Why can't you just accept that I don't want this? Because I don't believe you, I said quietly. I think you do want this. I think you're just scared. You don't know anything about what I want, she said, and there was anger in her voice for the first time. Please go. I went, but it killed me. We didn't talk for 2 weeks after that. It was the longest we'd gone without contact since we'd met, and I was miserable. I threw myself into my work, into finishing my graphic novel, into anything that would distract me from missing her. But everything reminded me of her. Every book I read, every coffee shop I passed, every song on the radio. She texted first. Just 3 words. I miss you. I replied immediately. I miss you too. We met for coffee the next day, and it was awkward at first, both of us dancing around what had happened. But eventually we fell back into our rhythm, back into the easy friendship that had always felt like more. Ask number 5 came at my book launch party 4 months later. My graphic novel had finally been published, and Victoria was there, beaming with pride, telling everyone who would listen that she'd watched me create every page. She gave a toast that made me cry, talking about my talent and dedication and the beauty of the story I'd told. After the party, walking through the city at midnight, high on success and champagne and the way she was looking at me, I asked again, Be with me, Victoria. Please. I'm in love with you. I have been since the day we met. Don't, she said, her voice breaking. Please don't say that. Why not? It's true. And I think you love me too. It doesn't matter what I feel, she said. I can't do this. I can't be what you need. You're exactly what I need. No, she said firmly. I'm not. And I need you to stop asking me, or we can't be friends anymore. I mean it this time. So I stopped. For months, I didn't ask. We continued our friendship, continued our twice-weekly coffee dates and daily texts and long phone calls about everything and nothing. I dated other people, trying to move on, but no one compared to her. No one made me laugh like she did, or challenged my thinking, or felt like home the way she did. Ask number 6 came 8 months after the book launch, on her 30th birthday. I'd organized a surprise party for her at her favorite restaurant with all her friends and family. She was radiant that night, happy and relaxed in a way I rarely saw her. When everyone was leaving and it was just the two of us cleaning up, she hugged me tight and said I was the best friend she'd ever had. "I don't want to be your friend," I said into her hair. "I want to be your everything. Please, Victoria. One chance. That's all I'm asking." She pulled back, and I saw tears streaming down her face. "Why are you doing this to me? Why can't you just let this go?" "Because I love you. Because I think you love me too. Because we're wasting time being scared when we could be happy." "You think it's that simple? You think love is enough?" "Yes," I said. "I do." "Then you're naive," she said sadly. "Love isn't enough. Love doesn't fix everything. Love doesn't make the fear go away. What are you so afraid of?" But she wouldn't answer. She just asked me to leave, and I did, crying the whole subway ride home. Ask number 7 came 3 months later, and it was the most painful one yet. We'd been at a mutual friend's wedding, and watching 2 women declare their love in front of everyone, make promises and build a life together, had been beautiful and torturous in equal measure. Victoria cried through the whole ceremony, and I held her hand, and afterward at the reception, we danced together. She fit perfectly in my arms, her head on my shoulder, her hand in mine, and for those 3 minutes of that slow song, we weren't just friends. We were something more, something real, and everyone at the wedding could see it. "Run away with me," I whispered as we danced. "We could leave tonight, go anywhere, start over, just us." She lifted her head to look at me, and the longing in her eyes was so intense it hurt. "That's not real life. That's a fantasy." "It could be real if you let it." "I can't," she said, and she was crying again. "Please stop asking me. Please, you're killing me." "Then say yes and end both our suffering." "No," she said, pulling away from me. "My answer is no. It will always be no. Please, please stop asking." I should have stopped then. I should have walked away, protected my heart, moved on with my life. But I couldn't. Because I knew, deep in my soul, that she loved me. I could see it in every look, every touch, every moment we spent together. She was just trapped by something, some fear or trauma or belief that kept her from letting herself have what she wanted. So I decided to ask one more time. The last time. And I was going to make it count. It took me 2 weeks to work up the courage. 2 weeks of planning what I'd say, how I'd say it, making peace with the fact that she might actually say no and I'd have to let her go. I texted her asking her to meet me at her apartment building after work on a Thursday. She agreed, probably thinking we were just going to grab dinner like usual. It was raining when I got there, one of those sudden spring storms that come out of nowhere. I stood outside her building waiting, getting soaked, rehearsing my speech in my head over and over. When she arrived, hurrying up the street under an umbrella, she saw me and her face transformed with concern. "What are you doing standing in the rain? Come inside." "No," I said. "I need to say this here, right now, before I lose my nerve." She stopped, the umbrella forgotten in her hand, rain starting to soak her too. "Say what?" I took a deep breath. "I'm going to ask you out one more time. This is the last time, Victoria. The last time I put my heart on the line for you. The last time I tell you that I'm completely in love with you and I think you love me too. The last time I beg you to give us a chance. And if you say no, if you reject me again, I promise I will walk away and never bother you again. We can't be friends anymore because it hurts too much. So this is it. This is your last chance to say yes." Her eyes were wide, her face pale, rain dripping down her cheeks mixing with tears I couldn't distinguish from the water. "That's not fair. You can't give me an ultimatum." "I'm not trying to be fair. I'm trying to survive. Loving you from a distance is destroying me. So I'm asking you, Victoria Martinez, for the 8th and final time, will you please go out with me? Will you give us a chance? Will you let yourself be loved?" I watched her face crumble, watched every defense she'd built up over the 9 months I'd known her completely shatter. She dropped the umbrella and it clattered to the wet pavement as she closed the distance between us in 3 quick steps and grabbed my face with both hands. "I'm terrified," she sobbed. "I'm so fucking terrified." "Of what?" I asked gently, my hands coming up to hold her wrists. "Of this, of you, of how much I want this. My last relationship ended so badly, she broke me so completely, and I swore I'd never let anyone in again. I swore I'd never risk that kind of pain. But then you walked into my life, and you were everything I'd ever wanted, and I didn't know what to do. So I kept saying no, because saying no felt safer than saying yes and then losing you." "You're losing me anyway," I said, "right now. If you say no again, you lose me forever. Is that really safer?" "No," she whispered. "God, no. Losing you would destroy me." "Then don't lose me. Say yes, Victoria. Please say yes." She kissed me instead of answering with words, and it was desperate and messy and perfect. 9 months of longing and denial and fear all poured into that kiss. Rain soaked us both through, but neither of us cared. Her hands in my hair, my arms around her waist, pulling her closer, closer, trying to make up for all the time we'd wasted. When we finally broke apart, both of us breathless and crying and laughing, she pressed her forehead to mine and said the word I'd been waiting 9 months to hear. Yes. Yes to a date. Yes to giving us a chance. Yes to letting you love me. Yes to being terrified together instead of safe and alone. Just please, please don't walk away. Never, I promised. I'm never walking away from you. We went up to her apartment, peeled off our wet clothes, and she let me dry things while we made tea and talked. Really talked for hours about everything she'd been afraid of. About her ex-girlfriend who had been controlling and manipulative, who had isolated her from friends and family, who had made her believe she wasn't worthy of love. About the years it had taken to rebuild herself after that relationship ended. About the fear that she'd fall into the same pattern, lose herself again, get hurt again. "But you're not her," Victoria said, holding my hand across her kitchen table. "You've never once made me feel small or controlled. You've been patient and kind, and you've respected every boundary even when it hurt you. You've been my best friend, and I've been in love with you probably since that day in the bookstore, but I was too scared to admit it." "You don't have to be scared anymore," I said. "I'm not going to hurt you. I'm not going to control you. I'm just going to love you exactly as you are for as long as you'll let me." "Forever?" she asked with a small smile. "If you'll have me that long." Our first official date was that Saturday. I took her to dinner at a quiet Italian restaurant, and we talked and laughed and held hands across the table without any pretense of just being friends. I walked her home and kissed her goodnight on her doorstep like I'd dreamed of doing for 9 months. She invited me up, and we stayed up all night talking and kissing and making up for lost time. We took things slow after that, both of us conscious of her fears and her need to build trust. But every day she opened up a little more, let me in a little further. She told me about her childhood, her family, her dreams. I told her my own stories, my own fears, my own hopes for what we could build together. 3 months into officially dating, she told me she loved me. We were cooking dinner in my apartment, and she just turned to me and said it, simple and true, and without the fear that had haunted her for so long. "I love you. I'm in love with you. And I'm not scared anymore." I cried and kissed her and said it back, even though I'd been saying it in 1,000 small ways since the day we met. 6 months in, she asked me to move in with her. A year after that, I proposed. We got married in the same bookstore where we met, surrounded by poetry and books and everyone we loved. During her vows, she apologized for making me ask 8 times, and I told her I would have asked 100 times, 1,000 times, however many it took. That was 3 years ago. Now we have an apartment filled with books, a cat named Oliver after Mary Oliver, and a life built on patience and persistence, and the kind of love that's worth fighting for. She still has hard days sometimes, when the old fears creep back in. But now instead of pushing me away, she pulls me closer. She tells me when she's scared, and we work through it together. I asked her once if she regretted saying no those first 7 times, if she wished she'd said yes sooner. "No," she said thoughtfully, "because those rejections taught us both something important. They taught you that I was worth waiting for, worth fighting for, and they taught me that you weren't going anywhere, that your love was real and patient and not going to disappear the moment things got hard. We needed those 7 no's to make the 8th yes mean everything. And she's right. Because that 8th ask, standing in the rain with my heart on the line, willing to walk away if she said no one more time, that's when everything changed. That's when she finally let herself believe that love didn't have to be scary, that I was different, that we were worth the risk. This is my story. The story of asking 8 times before getting a yes. The story of persistence and patience and loving someone enough to fight for them even when they're fighting against you. The story of how sometimes the bravest thing you can do is give someone an ultimatum, because it forces them to choose, really choose, what they want. And I'm so grateful she finally chose me, chose us, chose love over fear. Those 7 rejections hurt like hell, but they made the yes, when it finally came, the sweetest word I've ever heard. And every day since, she chooses me again. And I choose her. And that's all love really is. Choosing each other, over and over, even when it's scary, even when it's hard, especially then. I wouldn't change a single one of those no's. Because they led to the yes that changed my life.